had retired fairly early, probably way too soon, and so I was looking for something to fill my time. I wanted something that was fun to do, and I wanted something that you had to think about. When I was introduced to pickleball, which I hadn't even heard of before my first meeting with my friends, I said, you know what? I had the paddle in my hand for about 5 minutes. I'm thinking, this ticks all the boxes. I was actually quite surprised because I was pretty much addicted right out of the gate. I've never looked back since. When I started, I just wanted to go out and have fun. I joined the Vernon Pickleball Club, and at that time, there was about 35 members. And I just saw the growth even at that time. Every time we'd have a session, there would be new people. And again, it was more just awareness. People didn't know anything about the game. And when they did find out about it, they thought, well, it's just a bunch of old people that, and at that time, it probably was more so of an older people's game, but things have changed since then. Just from that early growth, I kind of suspected there was this is going somewhere.
Anytime that he's had an idea, anytime he predicts a business trend, he's always been spot on. So after so many months of saying, no, guys, it's gonna be the next big thing, pickleball is gonna be the next big thing, we thought, you know what, maybe he has something, because he's never been wrong when it comes to predicting industry trends. We joke about it, we call it Brian's crystal ball. It's like he sees the trends before, anyone else. He's done it a few times and he always nails it. When we saw his passion for this sport, we knew, you know what, we have to listen to this because he's never been wrong, and he still hasn't been.
Well, I had a retail background, so there was really no one locally selling paddles. So I was calling stores in Calgary, I was calling stores in Victoria. During a very short conversation with the people I was dealing with, I realized that, first of all, they're not players. They don't know anything about the game. They really didn't know much about the product line. They just wanted to sell me a high-end paddle, and I usually bought them. So then I started thinking about all these other people in the club that kept asking me, where would you get that paddle from? Where'd you get that paddle from? So I just made some connections. I thought, I'll make a few phone calls to see if I can maybe pick up a product line, and which I did. And I started basically selling to the club out of my suitcase.
So he just really got involved in the sport. And as he tends to do, he takes his passions and he turns them into business ideas. And we've seen it over and over, and anything he pursues with a passion, he is always extremely successful with. So after so many months of talking pickleball in our ears, we finally said, okay, maybe he's got something here. And that's when he launched his very first online pickleball store. And we were shocked to see how successful it really was right off the bat. It sort of proved us all wrong. It's been a journey. We weren't completely sold on the idea at first, but it didn't take long until he was living this passionate dream through this business, that we just thought, yeah, he's got something here.
The game started fairly strong in the US way before Canada. And so our snowbirds were basically bringing the game back to us. Canada was probably in general quite a ways behind the US, just as we were here in Vernon. But as the sport grew, it didn't just grow in Vernon, it grew right across Canada. BC's probably one of the stronger provinces, although Ontario's, they've all really developed into very strong pickleball clubs everywhere. Well, there wasn't that many lines available at that time. And so basically I just went online and I just started making contacts. And I think I just started, remember, with one line, and I had a bunch of little compartments I built in my home office because I did start it out of my home. But all of a sudden I grew that and I had to get more shelves, and then there's new vendors, and that was the process kind of I followed when I was in business in previous years, is always trying to source the best product, give people a variety of products, stay competitive. And the online business was obviously a fairly new thing for me, so that was a bit of a learning curve. There was no free deliveries for pickleball equipment for anybody that was selling online at that time. So that's when I started $99, anything over $99, free shipping. And that kind of propelled us until everyone started catching on to what we were doing and trying to follow our lead. I had never really entered into the online business. So I thought, well, this is a perfect little experiment for me. I wanted something to fill a little more of my time. I still wanted some challenges. I thought, hey, well, this would be a great thing to just start as an online business. And so I got started and just kept going. What had really happened is I just thought, oh, this little business just going to fill a few of my hours every day. Well, it didn't take very long, and every day I was packing my car right to the roof, going down to Canada Post, dropping off, next day repeat. Finally, I said, I think this is way more than what I wanted to do work-wise. I wanted to have more fun. And it just happened that Cara was ready to go back into the business world, and it was a perfect handoff, and I couldn't be more proud of what she's done with this business.
When I stepped in, my dad had been running it for, I think, a little over a year. It was doing really, really well online. And I think at that point he realized, I'm supposed to be retired. I didn't do this to kickstart a second career. So when I came aboard, we worked together and we basically relaunched a much larger, all-encompassing website, similar to what we have today. And then we thought, where else can we take this business? Well, where else can we grow? And that's sort of what led us to our manufacturing division and ultimately wholesaling our product throughout Canada. So in terms of vision, it sort of started as a small seed and grew from there. There was so much opportunity in this business. And I think until I stepped in and really had some time to spend working in this industry, that's when we started developing this vision. It wasn't automatic. It wasn't right off the bat that we said, oh, we're going to do, all these things. It sort of came to us gradually as we saw, the real potential of this industry, this business. Going from brick and mortar into the online world was a huge learning curve. My only business experience up until then was running physical brick and mortars, which I had many years of experience doing, but going into online was completely different. Marketing was completely different. I mean, long gone are the days of radio remotes where the guys from the radio station come to our location and advertise in person. Long are the days of newspaper. So I think it was almost like Business University 101, doing that all over again, but in the online platform, online sphere, because it was just so different than the physical sphere that I had always worked in. We had to learn fast because the growth of the business. We're lucky enough to do both the physical brick and mortar and the online, but it was quite a transition for us. Because we were Canada-wide, learning different marketing methods to get our name out to every little corner of Canada. We work really closely with a lot of schools and clubs across Canada, from little towns in Saskatchewan to big cities out east. Every province and territory in the country we've sold pickleball to. But for us, the challenge was, okay, how do we get our name out there? How do we, from little old Vernon, BC, working initially in our basement, how do we get our name out there to different clubs and community groups that are starting to play this wonderful sport? So that was a big challenge. Literally got on the phone, cold called clubs, touch base with different community groups. That was creating a lot of relationships with a lot of players and clubs across Canada. So it took time. Every player seems to sort of need something different, which is why we carry so many different brands. So we carry over 50 different brands of paddles and footwear and accessories and ball machines. How we sort of juggle having something for everybody. We're really cognizant about carrying a lot of beginner product, well-priced intermediate product, as well as that advanced higher-end product. And we don't say one product is better than the other, because depending on what sort of player you are, everybody's going to need something different, because we're trying to be sort of that all-inclusive sport, get everybody involved, every age, every income bracket. I mean, young, middle-aged, older folks. So we want to make sure that we have a full, inclusive lineup of product as well to help those players out. So we launched Apex early on, and Apex is sort of our house brand, which we're very proud of. We just noticed there was a lack of product in the marketplace for youth and beginner players. There just wasn't a lot out there for under $100, $150. And we thought, these schools that kept contacting us saying, we need 50 paddles, we need 100 paddles, but here's our budget. We just can't afford to buy these high-end paddles that you're bringing in from the States. So we said, we can fulfill this need by designing and creating our own paddle line, which we did. So we started with one model at first, which was a huge hit. We sent it out to a ton of schools. Everybody really, really liked it. It was super durable. It was super affordable. That was our very first paddle, which grew into a number of different paddles since then. I think we've had over the years 12 or 14 different models. We're currently designing a brand new bottle with some new technology that's out in the industry. So we're super proud of our own brand. I think it's really helped us grow the business and form those relationships with schools and clubs that, maybe we couldn't have if we had just had sort of that expensive name brand product. Apex paddles have been really popular because they are that Canadian designed quality paddle built for that beginner player that's maybe buying on a budget, as well as the schools and the clubs across Canada that do work on a budget. They're buying, multiple paddles for a lot of kids or club members. That's where Apex Pickleball has been really helpful. We serve to fill that gap where there wasn't a lot on the market initially. So my dad, ever since I was a kid, he's always had brick and mortar retail stores. And I always learned that old school style customer service takes you a long way, because that's how I saw his businesses succeed and thrive and grow. He took such an old school approach to customer service. That's sort of the only way I saw to run this company going forward, was to, take that approach where someone can call the store and we get people call, they can talk to a human, they can get some really good advice on what kind of equipment to use. Just being able to reach out and physically speak to somebody on the other line. I don't think you get that with a lot of big companies nowadays. And our team, we've got a really, really knowledgeable team of experts that know everything about the sport. They know everything about the equipment that we sell. It's really important for us to kind of go that extra mile for our customers. And for us, it's not just about that sale. It's about the after-sale service as well, which I think has taken us a long ways as well. We're creating these relationships with not only customers, but clubs that, we've been dealing with clubs. There's some clubs out there that we've been dealing with for over 10 years. And you really do create those relationships, and that takes you a long ways. And our business, we sell a product that ultimately sometimes breaks down, or, things happen and manufacturer's defects happen. We offer warranties, and you come to us, we help you out, we service that product. It's not just, we make the sale and we hope we never hear from you again. That's not who we are. We want to foster each sale, we want to foster each customer, and, ultimately we want to have those customers for years to come and be able to help them when they do, come back and they need to upgrade to that next paddle, or they need to replace their court shoes that they've worn out. So we do work really hard to really spend time with every customer that calls or emails or comes into our stores, and creating those lasting relationships with them. All this technology that's now in our industry, we're getting more requests for every day. So sort of that basic fiberglass pickleball paddle that was once industry standard is just sort of not something that's widely sought after anymore. It's, the fancy, all the different types of pickleball paddles we have, which is why we have a huge selection, because there's a lot more technology in our product than there once was. Same thing goes with footwear. It's not just your basic court shoe and we've got, 3 to choose from. It's now levels of court shoes offering different features. And we have over 50 different footwear models now. So yeah, it's really come a long ways. There's every type of item you could think of for pickleball. It's out there and we try and carry it. since we first started. I mean, the technology that's involved in the pickleball paddles and the shoes and even some of the gear is it's pretty impressive. Carbon fibers and thermoform paddles and different shapes and sizes, different core thicknesses. Yeah, just lots to choose from and way more selection than there ever was a decade ago. For the last 2 or 3 weeks, just with what's going on in the world, every second phone call and every second customer that comes in is asking for that Canadian-made or Canadian-designed product. So right now, the big thing is Canadian component. So whether it was designed in Canada or made by a Canadian company or even manufactured in Canada is the huge trend right now. And we're really lucky. We have a lot of our companies have Canadian components. So whether they're based in Canada or they're designing their product in Canada. Today, we discovered one of our most popular pickleball eyewear are actually made here in Canada, which we're super excited about. So that's right now, that's the big trend, is that Canadian component with our product.
The big turning point, I believe, for pickleball was COVID. People were at home. Families were together. They needed things to do. And a lot of it was sports related. And where the big change was is not so much in the older players, but getting young people involved. And now it's in a lot of schools. And there's some young players in Canada right now that are probably going to be heading into the pro leagues within a very short time. I'm just amazed at when I see the quality of play from a player that's 13 or 14 or 15 years old. I mean, that was non-existent when I started. I mean, the youngest players at that time were probably in their 50s or 60s, whereas now I've seen kids probably 10, 12 years old that are picking up a paddle and starting the game with their parents, their grandparents, or whoever. We've always had, even in my time, we tried to build relationships with customers. We've given back to the organizations as well. I remember when I first started, I just bought a whole bunch of wood paddles and I basically donated them to schools across Canada. The deal was I'll supply the product, you just pay the shipping out. And that, I think, got a lot of things going and people talking about our business, because to me, it was a way of advertising. And again, just being involved, being the ambassador for the game. I mean, everywhere I go, pretty soon people would be saying, "Well, there's Mr. Pickleball," and they want to talk pickleball. Well, that means that we're doing something right to be that that well known. It's just when I look at where I started working out of my home, then I worked in moved it into my garage, and then when the big turning point was when Cara took over the business. That was a real changer, and I didn't ever envision that it would become anything close to what it is today. But there's a lot of things that have happened in the meantime, and my theory with business has always been you're either a leader or a follower, and Cara has those same business outlook, and she's just taken it, and it's gone so far beyond what probably I could have taken it, because I'm not into the social media or any of that stuff. And you really have to be on top of all this stuff now to market yourself. It's not putting an ad in a paper or a phone book or something like that. The world has changed. Marketing has changed considerably. And Cara, being younger and being involved in all those avenues, it certainly helped to grow. Like I say, I could never have dreamt where this business would be today. It's always good, success is nice, but, we can never forget where we came from. I've always believed in, once you reach a certain level of success, that you do give something back to your community. In this case, it was trying to get young people into the sport, getting schools involved. And that's kind of, the things that were important to me. Because I considered it a hobby business at that time, I didn't have to worry about the financial end of it. I just wanted something to do. And however, over time, that obviously changed into a very viable business, which I really didn't know what it would be at the beginning or not.
Getting our product or any product that we have out in the hands of youth and groups that just maybe can't afford to purchase the product themselves, but they have these groups that are super passionate about our sport. That's important to us. So, I mean, for us, we'll often talk to, a club or a school that they're saving up for a bunch of paddles. And we say, you know what, we've got a whole bunch of refurbished paddles that we can send you, which, we do all the time. We'll refurbish paddles that come in on a donation, or they come in under warranty and they just need to have a regrip or a re-edge. So what we do is we'll refurbish product and we'll send it out to these schools and clubs just to help them out. For us, that's really important to be able to get pickleball paddles into the hands of people that maybe just can't afford a pickleball paddle at this time, or have never tried the sport, and this is their chance to get into it without investing any money into the sport. So creating those relationships, helping people get into our sport, it's really important for us, because that's sort of where we see, people fall in love with the sport, and, then they think, oh yeah, Pickleball Depot, they donated my club X amount of paddles. They would probably come to us if they need that next paddle or that next pair of shoes. So it's sort of fostering those relationships, but it's getting product into the hands of clubs and schools that just perhaps can't afford it. For us, pickleball, we see it as a really inclusive sport. We love to see youth involved. Any age can play it. Just last year, we met a couple grade, I think it was 6 and 7 classes from one of our local elementary schools at the Dome. We taught them pickleball for a few hours. They loved it. A lot of them had never played before. Some had with their parents. So for us, fostering pickleball for especially youth at a young age is so important, because they can go and then they can play with their friends, they can play with their parents, they can play with their grandparents, which is not a lot of sports you can do that in. So to be able to have a sport where any age can play together is pretty amazing. And I think that just gives kids a chance to connect with, their grandparents, connect more with their parents, connect even with their friends in school. I know a couple years ago when my son was in elementary school, his school had a pickleball club. So, I mean, it's such an inclusive sport that everyone can play and play together, which is so important. And we love seeing that. Well, for me personally, it's when people that have shopped with us online for years come into our brick and mortar shop and seeing their reaction to visiting us in person. It always blows me away. People come, they're taking pictures of themselves outside the store with the sign. They're taking pictures of us in the store. And just the excitement we see of, customers that we've been helping online for years, visiting us in person, it just always blows me away. We do get that a lot because we're sort of we're a tourist destination. So we do get a lot of folks from out east that come in the summer times. They always make a point of stopping to see us. I have a couple customers that they say that we're on their first stop when they hit the Okanagan, which always just warms my heart. Seeing that passion and that, that relationship that we worked so hard at, seeing that in person and talking to people and hearing what joy pickleball has brought them in their life, that's one of the most rewarding parts for me, is just seeing, how pickleball has touched people as a sport. A few years ago, we had a fellow who was from out east, and he was 90, and he came to visit us in one of our retail locations. And to see how thrilled he was to be in our store, meeting us for the first time, taking pictures of himself and his family with our sign outside of our store, introducing himself to the staff. At 90 years old, he was telling us how much he plays, how passionate he is as a player, and that he's been shopping with us for years. And he was just so thrilled to meet us in person and be in one of our stores. That was a pretty amazing moment. And to speak with someone who is 90 years old and still on that court almost every day was just such an amazing moment for myself and my staff. And, other customers were at the store when he was in, and everyone was sort of crowded around him and asking him questions. And so, yeah, that was one of my more memorable moments. But of course, when people come in and just tell us how pickleball has changed their lives. So it's these really touching moments where people seem to really open up to us, and they're happy to spread their sort of their joy of the sport that's helped them overcome some really hard times in their lives. So that's been pretty amazing moments for us to hear these stories from some of our customers. I mean, there's lots of rewarding things in this business, but that would be probably number one.
I knew it was going to be big. I didn't think it would be this big, this fast. Because again, there is a level of addiction to this game, and I've heard this so many times. And just in my case, 5 minutes of hitting that ball, and I'm thinking, you know what, this is going to be fun. And I couldn't even imagine how many thousands of games I've played. I never get tired of it. It's always fun, and it's not just the hitting the ball around; it's the social part of it. I've met a lot of really nice people and people that have become friends, and we have a lot of fun on the court. And sometimes you think, well, are they really having a game, or are they just having a good social time? And I think that's a big part of what makes this game so successful. You can be very competitive, or you can just be very casual player, and you play with people that are more or less playing at your level. We're all out there to have fun. I can see there's still a lot of growth. Again, there's more businesses like Pickleball Depot selling pickleball products. All this is more exposure to the game. Even in the last 5 years, the growth that's taken place, I couldn't have imagined that, and I don't know whether I really can imagine what's ahead of us. However, now when you've got professional leagues starting up, certainly in the US, and I believe they're in Canada now too. There's these massive indoor pickleball facilities now being built, which were totally unheard of 5 years ago. There's just it's a combination of things, and it's gaining momentum, and I don't think that's going to stop anytime soon.